They thought it was over. The hype, the headlines, the electric buzz around Caitlin Clark, it all seemed like yesterday's news. As the Indiana Fever stumbled into the game with sluggish energy and a broken rhythm, critics didn't hesitate. Overrated, they muttered. Figured out. They pointed to her recent performances, the physical toll, the endless pressure, and whispered that maybe the spotlight had burned too hot for too long. The narrative was already being written. The league had caught up, and the fairy tale was about to end. But they forgot one thing. Caitlin Clark doesn't crumble. She calculates. In a game where most would fold under the weight of expectation and exhaustion, she didn't retreat. She recalibrated. From the opening minutes, even while visibly under the weather, she led with poise. Each pass was deliberate. Every movement, a quiet declaration that she was still in control. The media had been circling like vultures. Social platforms buzzed with hot takes. Rival fans took aim at her confidence, her swagger, her refusal to back down. And when the Fever's offense started to fall apart without key players on the court, the vultures thought they smelled blood. They didn't realize they were witnessing a setup, not for a fall, but for a statement. Because what happened next wasn't just a comeback, it was a war cry. Caitlin Clark didn't just remind the world why she was the most talked about rookie in WNBA history. She redefined what it means to lead. And when her team rallied behind her, when the overlooked name stepped into the spotlight, it became clear that this wasn't about one player. It was about a fire that wouldn't go out, not when fouled, not when ignored, not when pushed to the edge. The Fever weren't finished. They were just getting started. From the moment the ball tipped, something felt off. The Indiana Fever looked like a shadow of themselves, lethargic, disconnected, and lacking the spark that usually made them dangerous. The lineup raised eyebrows. No Sophie Cunningham, no Lexi Hull, no defensive anchor, no firepower from the perimeter. Stephanie White's decision confused fans and analysts alike, but what followed was even more baffling. The team moved like they were stuck in molasses. Defensive rotations were slow, reaction times even slower. The opposing team capitalized on every hesitation, every missed assignment. It didn't just look bad, it looked hopeless. Possession after possession, the Fever gave up easy buckets. It wasn't just a rough start, it was the kind of start that breaks teams before they ever get the chance to fight back. And right in the middle of it all, Caitlin Clark was struggling. Not because of the defense, not because of the noise, but because behind her calm demeanor, she wasn't at 100%. Word had spread pregame. Clark was under the weather. No one knew just how bad, but it was clear from her movement that something was off. Still, she dug deep. With a quiet determination, she put up the Fever's first points, almost willing herself into rhythm. But even then, the rest of the team wasn't matching her urgency. By the midway point in the first quarter, the opponent started pulling away. They pressed harder, pushed the tempo, and sent traps at Clark like they already knew the blueprint. A few fans began shaking their heads, murmuring that maybe the scouting reports were right. Maybe this really was how you stop Caitlin Clark. But something crucial was missing from that theory. Clark wasn't the problem. The lineup around her lacked movement. Screens were late, off-ball cuts were non-existent, and defensively it was like they were playing a step behind. With every possession, the Fever's confidence dipped a little lower. Players were looking around, searching for someone to lead, someone to spark something, anything. And while the cameras zoomed in on Clark, waiting for her to explode with frustration or force shots in desperation, she did something else. She waited, she assessed, she knew the storm would pass, and more importantly, she knew help was coming. Just when it seemed like the game might slip too far out of reach, a subtle shift began on the sidelines. Coach White stood, arms crossed, calculating her next move. Fans might not have seen it then, but what happened next would flip the script entirely. Because the Fever weren't down and out. They were about to wake up. Everything changed when Sophie Cunningham checked in. It didn't come with fireworks or fanfare, just a quiet substitution, a shift on the bench that at first glance looked routine. But those watching closely knew something had just snapped into place. The body language on the court shifted. The opponent didn't know it yet, but the game they thought they were winning had just flipped upside down. Sophie Cunningham didn't ease into the game. She stormed into it. Her presence immediately injected pace, urgency, and grit into the lineup. And with her came a trio of lethal support: Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, and of course, Caitlin Clark. Suddenly the floor spacing opened up, ball movement became surgical, and there was a buzz in the arena that hadn't been there all night. Caitlin now had options, real ones, teammates who could shoot, cut, and defend at full throttle. Sophie set hard screens and crashed the boards. Lexi floated to the corner like a sniper waiting for the green light. And Mitchell, always poised, always dangerous, drew defenders just by being on the floor. The defense couldn't swarm Caitlin the way they had earlier, not without leaving someone else wide open. And that's when it happened. The transformation. The Indiana Fever weren't just playing basketball anymore. They were orchestrating a symphony. One possession, it was a fast-paced give-and-go that left the opponent stunned. The next, a cross-court laser from Caitlin to Lexi, who buried a three without blinking. The momentum swung hard. Every pass had intention. Every cut had purpose. And the crowd? They could feel it. The roar started building. The underdog energy faded and was replaced by something more dangerous: belief. Sophie Cunningham didn't just bring energy, she brought attitude. Her body language screamed, "We're not done." And every time she got the ball, she forced defenders to make uncomfortable choices. Sag off and risk the three, step up and get burned on the drive. Either way, Sophie was punishing them. Then there was Lexi Hull, quietly lethal. The league leader in three-point percentage didn't need 10 shots to make an impact. She took 2 and buried both. Flawless execution, quick release, no hesitation. The Fever weren't just relying on Caitlin anymore. They were making a statement. If you focus on her, we've got more cards to play. And that's exactly what Stephanie White had been planning. This wasn't just a lineup change. It was a master stroke, a chess move that flipped the board. With Sophie, Lexi, Kelsey, and Caitlin on the floor, Indiana wasn't reacting anymore. They were dictating the terms. What the other team had failed to realize was that the first quarter wasn't a weakness, it was bait. And now the trap had sprung, and it was only just beginning. If the Fever thought they had the momentum, the other side had a different plan. Play dirty. The physicality escalated fast, and it wasn't your typical playoff-style grit. This was something else. One player in particular took it upon herself to go beyond the bounds of fair competition. Every time Caitlin Clark tried to drive, she got grabbed. Arm pulls, jersey tugs, cheap hits to the ribs, and the refs, silent, blind. Either they were letting the players play through, or they simply didn't care. The same player, let's call her what she was, the enforcer for the opposition, started making it personal. This wasn't just defense. This was an attempt to frustrate, break rhythm, and get inside Caitlin's head. But they forgot who they were dealing with. Caitlin Clark has been hacked, shoved, and screamed at before. She's been the villain in some gyms and the hero in others. What she's never been? Shaken. And as the fouls kept piling up without a whistle in sight, her eyes changed. She wasn't looking for help. She wasn't looking at the referee. She was calculating. The next few possessions were like watching a surgeon work. Caitlin didn't flinch. She adjusted. You want to grab her arm? Fine. She'll dish a no-look pass while you're too busy clutching her elbow. You want to hold her jersey? She'll break free and drop a dime before you even realize she's gone. Every foul became fuel. Every cheap shot became another brick in the fire she was building. And then came the shove. Midway through the quarter, after yet another uncalled foul, that same player, clearly emboldened, shoved Caitlin Clark right in the back. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't strategic. It was frustration, plain and simple. The ref blew the whistle, but no flagrant, no warning, just a standard foul, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. The arena lost it. Fans screamed, players protested, but Caitlin, she turned calm, unbothered. "I'm not scared of you." 5 words. Quiet, sharp, and final. And with that, the game changed again. You could feel the tension shift. The player who'd been dishing out fouls all night had just crossed a line, and Caitlin made sure she knew it. Because now it wasn't just about the score. It was personal. Not just for Caitlin, but for the whole team. Next play down the court, Caitlin dropped a genius assist, threading the needle between defenders for a clean bucket. Then another. Then she pulled up and drained a 3 with all the elegance of a practiced assassin. The crowd erupted. The bench stood. Momentum swung like a wrecking ball. The Fever were cutting into the lead. Fast. And for the first time all game, the opposition looked rattled because they'd tried to break Caitlin Clark. And all they did was wake her up. Caitlin Clark lit the fuse. But it wasn't just her fire burning, it spread through the entire roster. When Stephanie White finally rotated in Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, and Kelsey Mitchell alongside Caitlin, it was like watching a storm system form in real time. The chemistry, instant, the tempo, relentless. And the crowd, on its feet. This wasn't the same sluggish Indiana Fever that started the game. This was something else entirely. Suddenly, there was movement everywhere. The ball wasn't sticking, it was flying. Swing passes, skip passes, backdoor cuts, everyone was in motion. The defense locked in. Hands were active, feet were fast. The whole team bought in. You could see it on their faces. This wasn't just another quarter, it was a statement. Lexi Hull, quiet all game, stepped up and drained a 3 like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Just a few possessions later, she did it again. That's the kind of confidence that rattles an opponent. You focus all your energy on stopping Caitlin, and suddenly you're getting torched by Lexi Hull, the best 3-point shooter in the league by percentage. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. She sprinted through screens, chased down loose balls, and made life miserable for the opposing guards. It wasn't flashy, it was ferocious. She played like she had something to prove. And Kelsey Mitchell, she added her 3rd straight impressive performance. Mid-range jumpers, slashes to the rim, defensive stops. Kelsey didn't just compliment Caitlin, she gave the Fever another engine. This unit didn't just change the pace, they changed the question. You want to stop Caitlin Clark? Good luck. Because now you've got Sophie flying at you full speed, Lexi raining down 3s, and Kelsey tearing through your back court. Every time the defense adjusted, Indiana had another answer. What started as a game hanging by a thread turned into a full-blown clinic. And then came the moment that told everyone in the building, the Fever were back. Caitlin ran the break after a missed shot, eyes scanning the court. She had an open lane to the basket, but instead of forcing a tough layup, she made the extra pass. Unselfish, strategic. Sophie caught it in rhythm and fired. Swish. Clean. Beautiful. That shot didn't just cut the lead, it cracked the other team's confidence. It was more than points. It was poise, control, power. And as the final seconds of the first half ticked away, Indiana didn't just look like they belonged, they looked like the most exciting team in the WNBA. The question had been changed. Now it was, how do you stop a team with this many weapons? The third quarter didn't start with basketball. It started with attitude. Ryan Howard, now fully locked into her role as the antagonist, came out swinging, figuratively, but nearly literally. Her energy wasn't focused on the ball. It was aimed squarely at Caitlin Clark. Barking, staring her down, mouthing off after every bucket. She was hunting for a reaction, and the crowd knew it. So did Caitlin. But if Howard thought trash talk and bruises were enough to break Caitlin's focus, she was in for a brutal reality check. Early in the quarter, Howard scored and turned to shout, "You can't guard me." Caitlin didn't flinch. Next possession, she went coast to coast, slicing through defenders like they weren't even there. And when she finished at the rim with a tough layup, she didn't yell. She didn't bark. She she just jogged back on defense with a smirk that said everything. That's how it's done. Then she did it again and again. Her jump shot wasn't falling like usual, so she shifted gears. Playmaker mode, precision passes, movement without the ball. She became the hub that every offensive possession flowed through. Meanwhile, Howard kept chirping. She thought she had the upper hand, until Lexi Hull clamped down. Then Sophie joined the fray, and suddenly every dribble Howard took felt like it came with someone breathing down her neck. Every screen got fought through. Every look at the basket became a battle. And the refs? Still inconsistent? Missed calls? Questionable whistles? You could feel the frustration mounting. But Indiana kept their composure. The Fever's coach, Stephanie White, saw the chaos brewing and managed the rotations perfectly. Knowing they had another game in less than 24 hours against the defending champs, she balanced minutes like a chess master. Strategic substitutions, targeted matchups, calculated risks. Caitlin got a short breather. The Dream took advantage. Briefly, they regained the lead. The arena went tense, but then Sophie Cunningham checked back in. And just like that, the momentum shifted again. She brought back the intensity, the hustle, the edge. She reclaimed control. Caitlin re-entered and immediately drew Greer's fifth foul. That was the moment you felt the balance tip. Howard hit a jumper, celebrated like the game was over. She had no idea what was coming, because right after that bucket, Caitlin Clark stormed down the floor and scored at the rim again. One move, one finish, no words needed, and that's when it became clear. Even when Caitlin isn't feeling her best, even when the refs look the other way, even when the other team throws everything they have at her, she doesn't break. She adjusts, then she takes over. And with Lexi and Sophie on the floor, the Fever had the support system to make that takeover complete. They weren't just fighting to stay in the game anymore. They were taking it back. You could feel it building. The fourth quarter wasn't just another period of basketball, it was war. The energy shifted the moment Caitlin Clark stepped back onto the court. Tired? Sure. Under the weather? Absolutely. But none of that mattered now, because this was the moment she lives for. Ryan Howard was still talking, still pushing, still trying to get under Caitlin's skin. But Caitlin had seen it all before, and she knew exactly how to respond. Not with words, with execution. Atlanta tried to crank up the pressure. They double-teamed her, sent traps, switched aggressively. It didn't matter. Caitlin's ball handling was crisp. Her vision, razor sharp. She wasn't forcing shots. She was orchestrating an offense with poise most veterans dream of. One moment she'd dish to Sophie sprinting in transition. The next, she'd break down the defense and find Lexi wide open in the corner. Swish. Tie game. Howard came down and hit a tough three. Turned and screamed. The crowd roared. But before she could even get back on defense, Lexi Hull answered. Quick catch. Quick release. Network silence. It wasn't just about skill anymore. It was about who could stay composed in the fire. Stephanie White made her move. She called for her closer, Sophie Cunningham. The moment she stepped on, everything got loud. Every cut, every screen, every defensive stand. Sophie wasn't playing basketball anymore. She was leading a charge, and she had Caitlin Clark right beside her, fueling every possession. The Fever had trimmed the lead. Now they were seizing control. Every possession felt like it could be the one. Then, with less than 3 minutes left, Howard tried again. Charged into Caitlin, yelling in her face. The crowd waited. The ref swallowed the whistle. Caitlin just smiled. Then she drew a foul the very next play. Hit the free throw. Tie game. Back on defense, Lexi picked Howard's pocket. Fast break. Sophie ran the lane like she was chasing destiny. Ball in Caitlin's hands. No hesitation. She hit Sophie with a perfect bounce pass between defenders. Layup. Fever lead. Atlanta looked panicked. Their coach screamed from the sideline. The players looked unsure. Caitlin and Sophie, calm as ever. This was their moment. They had the lead. They had the crowd. They had the momentum. But they weren't done yet. Because Caitlin Clark wasn't playing just to win. She was playing to prove something. and Sophie Cunningham wasn't backing down from anything. The final minutes were about to deliver a finish that nobody watching would forget. 2 minutes. That's all that stood between the Fever and a statement win. But don't let the clock fool you. This wasn't a countdown. It was a pressure cooker. Howard hit a jumper. The crowd erupted. Atlanta surged. They had the lead again. But Caitlin Clark, ice. She didn't flinch. She didn't panic. She simply took the inbounds pass, pushed the tempo, and drew another foul. Calmly knocked down both free throws. Tie game again. The Fever's defense tightened. Sophie Cunningham bodied up her assignment. Lexi Hull cut off passing lanes. Natasha Howard held the paint like a fortress. Atlanta missed. Rebound, Lexi Hull. The ball found its way almost like fate back into Caitlin Clark's hands. The play developed slowly. Then suddenly, she exploded. A quick crossover, a fake, then the dish. Sophie Cunningham, already in motion, attacked the lane like it owed her money. Contact, foul, and one. She didn't even smile, just turned and walked to the free throw line like it was business as usual. Hit the shot. 3-point Fever lead. Atlanta scrambled, tried to answer. Howard forced a three, missed. Lexi again with the rebound. The crowd started to feel it. The roar wasn't just support now, it was belief. On the next play, Caitlin called for a screen. 2 defenders jumped out. She split them with a hesitation dribble and fired a pass so precise it looked rehearsed. Kelsey Mitchell, wide open, top of the key, bang. That shot cracked Atlanta's confidence like glass under pressure. But the Dream weren't ready to give in. They fought back, got to the line, cut the lead to 2. 1 minute left. The Fever didn't rush. They moved the ball, passed up good shots for great ones. Caitlin to Sophie, back to Caitlin. She faked, drew the defense, kicked to Lexi. Corner 3, perfect form, splash. That was the dagger. Atlanta tried to push, but they were out of rhythm. Every dribble was desperate, every pass a gamble. And when Sophie Cunningham ripped the ball away from Howard with 30 seconds left, the arena erupted. That was it. That was the moment. Stephanie White didn't even need to say anything. She knew it. They all did. The Fever had done it. They didn't just win. They made a statement. Caitlin Clark finished with a stat line that didn't even capture the full story. The poise, the leadership, the refusal to back down. Sophie Cunningham, the enforcer, the closer, the spark that turned a struggling team into a freight train. Lexi Hull, ice from deep, lockdown defense, big-time plays in the biggest moments. This wasn't just about one player. This was about belief, about rising from doubt. They came in battered, doubted, counted out, and they walked away with more than a win. They walked away with momentum, with unity, with fire. And for everyone who thought Caitlin Clark's story was over, it's just getting started. They said she was overrated, that she couldn't handle the physicality, that the hype had run out. But Caitlin Clark didn't just answer with points or assists, she answered with heart. When the pressure mounted, when the fouls piled up, when the referees swallowed their whistles, she kept moving forward. Every hit she took, every foul ignored, just fueled her fire. And she wasn't alone. Sophie Cunningham became the enforcer the team needed. She didn't just play defense, she made a statement. She stood up to the WNBA's toughest and never flinched. Lexi Hull kept coming, quiet but deadly. She picked her moments, made them count, and turned momentum every time the Fever needed a spark. Stephanie White? She adjusted, recalibrated, and unlocked the lineup that flipped the script. Together, they reminded everyone watching that the Indiana Fever are no longer just about one rookie star. They're a full-blown threat. And the WNBA? It's changing. Fast. Fans are watching again. Debates are sparking. And whether you love her or hate her, Caitlin Clark is the name on everyone's lips. But here's the twist. She's not even close to her ceiling. She's learning, adapting, building chemistry with her team. The bad news for her critics? She hears every word, and she's using it. So next time someone tells you it's over for Caitlin Clark, tell them to watch closer. Because what's coming next? That's the part no one's ready for.